Day on Locked On Rockies. Bounce back seasons. Who has to have it next year?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 30th day of November in the year 2022. I am your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we do every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. I am your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk. Been following this team my entire life and bringing you your daily podcast here for a little over 2 seasons now. Today on the pod, we're going to talk about bounce back seasons. But before we do that, want to thank you all for making Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, and you can take us wherever you go with the palm of your hand on your favorite streaming device. And you can also be part of the live chat, just like Furious MMO is here in the live chat. You can see him and all of the other Rockies fans in the live chat and ask your questions and get them answered live when you subscribe to Locked On Rockies on YouTube and be part of the show there. Let's dive in. Bounce back players. The Rockies' interesting roster, because there are some names. There are some obvious answers to this question. Obviously, let's just address it here. The Rockies need much more from Kris Bryant. That's the obvious answer. He is someone the Rockies definitely need to not only bounce back season would imply that he kind of had a season. The thing is, I'm confident that he is going to be able to still contribute if healthy. We saw enough from Kris Bryant knowing that arguably what he's going to do when healthy is what we saw. Offense helps there, higher average. The home runs, hopefully, will come. That's going to be a big change, hopefully, from bringing in Kris Bryant for more consistent play. But this is more players we saw a lot of, and we're going to see more of next year. And I think while we can sit here and focus on Kris Bryant, but that's just the obvious answer. The Rockies just need Kris Bryant to contribute. It's not necessarily a bounce, but they need Kris Bryant to contribute and be healthy. We need to have a conversation about the players that need to bounce back from ones that were healthy, that contributed, that played with the Rockies consistently throughout the entire season. And Eric Harper in the live chat nails it. The first one we need to talk about is Ryan McMahon. Statistically, he does finish okay. I mean, and he was one of the highest wins above replacement players on the Rockies. He is someone that did contribute. But we've seen and we know that Ryan McMahon is capable of much more. Ryan McMahon the Rockies next year are in a much better place, are in more competitive windows and in more competitive games next year if Ryan McMahon is an all-star, or if Ryan McMahon is close to an all-star. What's tough about third base in the National League is loaded, especially when it comes to benchmarking your things on something like an all-star game. But if Ryan McMahon is at least every team has to have a representative. And as long as we can sit here and say that Ryan McMahon is in the conversation of who the Rockies should send to the all-star game, if he's not already playing on an all-star caliber level, that's good news for the Rockies, because that means he's improving on what already is a solid base and a solid foundation. If Ryan McMahon can get on base more, if Ryan McMahon can hit the ball a little bit better, he's going to be impactful. And if he can strike out less, that's the big key thing. If we are seeing less strikeouts from Ryan McMahon, this is someone that had 20 home runs with a 246 batting average, 67 RBIs, and a line of 327, 414, 741, and an OPS plus of 98 on Baseball Reference here. So Realistically, that's not a terrible line. It can be much better. But the real issue is Ryan McMahon strikes out a ton, almost a career high in strikeouts last year, and backs up a season of 147 strikeouts. Ryan McMahon is striking out at a clip of at least 150 times, and he strikes out in critical and crucial situations for the Colorado Rockies. Ryan McMahon if he's not bouncing back and he's kind of continuing his trajectory as the offensive player that we're already seeing, then Ryan McMahon needs to be put in different spots in the batting order so that he's not coming up in crucial situations that he's going to strike out. Far too many times for the Rockies last year did we see the Rockies strike out, and that starts with Ryan McMahon. He was putting some stuff together. He did have some nice stretches when Ryan McMahon was swinging the bat well and he was going on those good stretches of ball. You could see what he's capable of, but the amount of strikeouts, the amount of and just lack of big time clutch hitting from Ryan McMahon, where they placed him in the lineup, was a little bit tough. Was a little bit of a bummer. You were just hoping for more from Ryan McMahon in terms of offense, especially when he goes in August. You're sitting there pretty encouraged by him. He's batting .311 with an OBP of .351 and a slugging percentage of .533. In that time, he also he got 15 RBIs with 5 home runs in the month of August in, what was that, 90 plate appearances and getting a total of 28 hits there. So almost, like we said, .311. That's a nice solid line, but 28 strikeouts in there, 21 strikeouts, 29 strikeouts, as you go just back through the months. And then he finishes the season in September. He falls off a little bit more, goes down to a 218 average, 284, 48 on the batting line there. Still another 27 strikeouts. The good news is 7 RBIs and 6 more home runs in that span. But still, the 27 strikeouts and less hits in that as well, dropping that to getting 19 hits in the month of September and 87 chances. Bounces back the strong series against that stretch against the Dodgers there in October, where he bats .333 in that series, .375, 600 average there, 15 plate appearances. He gets 5 hits with an extra bagger, a home run, a couple of RBIs, and a walk, and only 2 strikeouts in the final 5 games of the season, which is good, but it's just disheartening to scroll back. And I know this is the modern game. Strikeouts are a huge part of the game of baseball nowadays. That's something I think that's unfair to just hold on as to a downfall of baseball players, especially with how elite pitching is nowadays. But you can't sit there and disagree that the strikeouts were a huge issue for Ryan McMahon. And it's not of the offense. And as much as what we saw in the back half of the season was the improved Ryan McMahon defense that we know and love. Ryan McMahon was making plays at the end of the season that's the Gold Glover we know. He still ends up being a Gold Glove finalist. He still has some good stuff. And again, was one of the best performers on the Rockies last year statistically when you're looking at it. But we know that there's more there, and the Rockies believe in him to do more. So I think Ryan McMahon, and I think he wanted to do it in last year, but there's a lot of stuff. But now's the time. Ryan McMahon has to carve out his identity, has to come out and just be the leader. It's not that his performance has really lacked. It's not like I'm sitting here saying, if Ryan McMahon starts slow, we gotta reevaluate. That's not the case. Ryan McMahon is too valuable. But he is someone that we have higher expectations for, and I think the ceiling is higher, and I think he needs to step it up a little bit as more. He needs a bounce back season for Ryan McMahon, puts the Rockies in a better spot. And folks, you can be in a better spot when it comes to home security, and if you go with SimpliSafe. If you've thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Rockies listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year. You won't want to miss it. SimpliSafe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report for a third year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can get priority police response. SimpliSafe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs less than $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed system. With the top-rated SimpliSafe app, you can stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere. Arm or disarm, you can unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings anytime you'd like. Go get 50% off the new SimpliSafe system, their biggest deal of the year at simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb. Biggest sale of the year for SimpliSafe home security at simplisafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. In the live chat, we got a couple of comments here from Eric Harper. CJ and Connor Joe also. Crone Zone wasn't top shelf. Furious MMO says Ryan McMahon was overrated. And Eric Harper says when Ryan McMahon would strike out, it was more disappointing than others. The Rockies believe in Ryan McMahon. The Rockies have good reason to believe in Ryan McMahon. Ryan McMahon, unfortunately, is also dealing with a huge shadow of that position. But I think the ceiling is there, and I don't think it's safe to call him overrated just yet. We will see. I think this next year is going to be the true time to tell, because is he really overrated when he finishes with a 3.1 WAR, has a career high batting averages, hits a career high in home run, hits another 20 home run season. Sorry, I apologize. He's hit 23 home runs in 2021 and 24 home runs in 2019. One thing for sure, though, that we need to see more from Ryan McMahon is more RBIs. He should be driving in more runs. He drove in 83 in 2019 with that 24 home run season, and the season before last, he drove in 86. So that is a drop off of about 19 RBIs from Ryan McMahon there. But I think that's also safe to say that Ryan McMahon was feeling not having a certain really good hitting shortstop in the lineup there. Another player that the Rockies need to bounce back. We've talked about this and nailed it once again. CJ Cron has to be more consistent. The CJ Cron is fine. I mean, it's again, he serves the purpose of what he's doing. It's not flashy. The Rockies don't have a long-term commitment, but the future is a knockin'. And just like we've talked about over and over again this offseason, it's really the commitment to the prospects. CJ Cron gets in the way of two big-time prospects for the Rockies every time he plays first base. He also was responsible for most of the Rockies' offense last year. So when you're saying bounce-back season, he was an all-star. How can you have a bounce-back season from being an all-star? Well, that's because he clearly is capable of I guess it shouldn't be bounce-back for CJ Cron. It should be consistency. We've seen great CJ Cron. We've seen terrible CJ Cron. Honestly, next year, and I think that this is a big part of Kris Bryant's influence on the team too. If we don't have to lean on CJ Cron to be the big power bat, the only power generation that the Rockies had. I mean, think about it. Charlie Blackmon, you kind of think of just because of the past, sure, but he's not the same hitter he once was. He was able to leave the yard, but the Rockies didn't hit a lot of home runs. CJ Cron, though, was the one that was doing that. So when your best home run hitter on your team is CJ Cron, that's not really a good thing, because we can embrace and enjoy and actually appreciate what CJ Cron does and brings to the team when he's not the one that we have to solely rely on. When Kris Bryant is going to be more of the one to take the load of RBI generation, that means you kind of add depth and you add multiple threats into your offense. The Rockies, without multiple power threats, it really seems like they're missing out on how the game is played right now. Lots of teams have people that can leave the yard, and lots of teams had people in double digit and 20 plus home runs, and the Rockies didn't. So I think CJ Cron doesn't need to necessarily be put as a bounce back, but someone we need to see more consistency of, and not as much of the streakiness as we saw. Especially, I mean, CJ Cron fell off in the second half of the season. Let's take a look at some of his numbers here in the second half of the season. Finishes again with those 29 home runs. I thought he hit I thought he hit 30. Didn't he hit 30? I don't think that number. I thought he hit 30. I could have sworn he hit 30 home runs this year. Thought that was a whole big celebration. Was he hit 30 home runs for the first time in his career? I thought that was something we literally talked about. Am I reading this wrong from MLB? Anyway, that's not what we're talking about at the moment here. We're talking post All-Star break, CJ Cron. I mean, he had batted 300 in over 300 in May. He batted 271 in June and July. Then in July, after the All-Star game, 221 goes down to 2, and then a 248 average, a 198, and then a .091 to finish the year. The batting average never got as high. He never really was as strong of a hitter as he was in May. And he was still doing some damage, but again, he was averaging 30 strikeouts per month in the middle of the season. He got 21 in April, and then goes up to 32 in May, 33 in June, strikes out 28 times in July, 21 times in August. So, the strikeouts were getting improved on as he goes through the season, but he just really wasn't getting on base. He wasn't generating anything. And the home runs significantly decreased for CJ Cron as well. CJ Cron hits 7 home runs in April. He hits 6 in May, 4 in June, and then 5 in July. Only 2 in August, 5 in September, a little bounce back, and then none to finish out the season. So only really 7 home runs, and depending on where you break it in, so maybe closer to 8 home runs if you want to take it in the second half of the season versus 8. What is that? 14. Over 20 in the first half of the season. So there's that Cron capabilities puts him somewhat in this bounce back thing, but I don't know where to properly categorize him. And the interesting part about Connor Joe does need a bounce back, but it's how much time do you give Connor Joe to bounce back? That's why we had to have that whole podcast discussing Connor Joe. He is someone that needs to bounce back, but I like Connor Joe. I really do. But do we want to see Connor Joe over prospects? Do we want to see Connor Joe getting more playing time than the prospects? And I just don't think that answer is yes. I think the Rockies are put themselves in at least more in a better option when you go Tolia, Bouchard, Montero, and Tovar. Just because you got to see what you're going for. And Eric, I tell you what, we'll answer your last question here in segment number 3. But if you want to bet on who's going to have a great season for the Rockies next year, if you want to get in on all the betting action of the World Cup, if you want to see what's going on in the wide betting world, well, your number one source for info, stats, news, and analysis on sports betting, it's BetOnline. BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. They got the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. I'm talking World Cup. I'm talking football. I'm talking college football. I'm talking everything, including esports. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. They got podcasts to give you more information about betting lines, whatever you need. BetOnline has it there. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. You can head to the website, that's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about all the betting info, the lines, the trends, the action. If you want to see what some future bets might be for baseball, you can check it all out at betonline.net. Bet online, where the game starts. So we're talking bounce back seasons for the Rockies, and this is an interesting question. But to summarize and to kind of put a bow on the players that need to have bigger impacts for the Rockies next year are Ryan McMahon, Kris Bryant, and yes, the entire pitching staff. We've done a lot of pitching talk lately, and we talked a lot about those. So I didn't want to spend too much time on that. That one was kind of with Kris Bryant as the obvious one. But Ryan McMahon is someone I think that we can see a lot more capable things from. And of course, the pitching staff needs to be much, much better as well. The Rockies simply need much more from German Marquez, Kyle Freeland, and when healthy, Antonio Senzatella. And we'll see from Jose Arena as well, and whoever the fifth starter might be, and the entirety of the bullpen outside of Estevez and Daniel Bard. If Daniel Bard and Carlos Estevez take out some of the Estevez's low points, if they recreate their 2021s for the Rockies, I will be happy. If Estevez is even with the team. But the question that Eric Harper asks for us here is, who do you see as our best option at DH? It's a good question. It's a really good question. And it's because this is a position that the Rockies should dominate at. I mean, this is something I think should be so exciting for the Rockies as moving forward. I think to start the year off, it is best to use Charlie Blackmon in the DH role. I think he is the one that's going to make the most sense. And still was swinging the bat enough. I mean, we can take a look at Charlie Blackmon's stats once again here for the Rockies, but long term, it's not like you want to necessarily be leaning too much and for too long on Charlie Blackmon. 246 batting average, 16 home runs, 78 RBIs, and an OPS of 733. Not incredible, 109 strikeouts, but more RBIs than Ryan McMahon. Was able to walk a decent amount, did still hit some triples last year, 6 triples for Charlie Blackmon last year as well. So Charlie Blackmon is going to be the best option at DH for now because you're going to have Kris Bryant playing. You want him in defense. Depending on what the Rockies do in center field, Jonathan Daza is going to be there. Randall Grichuk will play right field, alternating with Tolia, Sean Bouchard as well. Crone is going to play your first base and will probably get a lot of time switching with Montero. Shortstop is really pointing to being Tovar. I don't think that I'm seeing from the beat from just people talking about Ezequiel Tovar. It sounds like the Rockies might be turning to Tovar as the starting shortstop for the Colorado Rockies already. Just giving the keys to the young guy. Maybe they're going to see what the spring holds, but I'm going to go ahead and say the Rockies won't be going after any shortstop. I think they'll handle shortstop in-house, or like we said, just go to Tovar. You're going to see Montero DH, hopefully a good amount, or you're going to see Crone DH a lot more. And I think the Rockies might lean with a Blackmon, Crone DH core and allow the prospects to play, freeing up first base for Tolia, freeing up first base for Montero, freeing up first base, for those players. Because again, do we really need to have? If we need CJ Cron's bat, do we need CJ Cron's defense necessarily in the game? We can replicate first base defense. So Charlie Blackmon's probably the best option still, followed by CJ Crone, and then fill it out with your prospects. Just make sure that DH position is either being used with your better bats and freeing up space for your prospects to get into the game, or let your prospects use it and get some ABs as well. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you so much to Furious MMO and Eric Harper for hanging out in the live chat today. You can find us free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. You can also find us here on YouTube. You can find us on Locked On Rockies. Just type Locked On Rockies into your YouTube search bar, and you can find us and know when we go live, when you subscribe to us there. And folks, you can find us on Twitter at LO Rockies. You can find me on Twitter at Paul Holden 33. Now that you made us your first listen of the day, go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, where you can stay up to date with the whole wide world of sports. And if you want to centralize that to Colorado, well, you can check out the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Until next time, I'm Paul.